After losing out on Chris Godwin and bowing out of the sweepstakes for both DK Metcalf and Cooper Kupp, the Patriots have finally landed their proven veteran wide receiver, signing former division rival Stefon Diggs to a 3-year, $69 million deal with $26 million guaranteed. Now, there are some pretty obvious concerns that come with this move, but from this perspective, it is a low-risk, potentially high-reward acquisition for a team with entirely too much money and not enough talent. A two-time All-Pro and Pro Bowler from 2020 to 2023, Diggs is one of the most accomplished receivers of the past half-decade. The 6-foot, 195-pounders never had great size or explosiveness, but he's a savvy route runner with outstanding competitive toughness and ball skills. He also has experience working with young quarterbacks, having been integral in Josh Allen's ascension early on and a top target for CJ Stroud in 2024. Through the first 8 weeks of last season, Diggs had almost 20 more targets and 15 more catches than the next closest Texan, and his 3 touchdowns were tied with Nico Collins for the most on the team. Diggs was also highly productive from a league-wide perspective, trailing only Chris Godwin in receiving conversions and ranking top 10 in catch rate and wide receiver rating when targeted. That hot streak was cut short in Week 8 when Diggs suffered a non-contact ACL tear. The injury, which took place on October 27th, came nearly 1 calendar year after Kendrick Bourne, who tore his ACL on October 29th, 2023. Now, Kendrick Bourne missed the entire offseason program and didn't return to the Patriots until October of the next season, but ESPN's Adam Schefter reports that Diggs is on track to return by the season opener. That said, there's no way of knowing exactly how a 31-year-old receiver will respond to that kind of injury, but for now, we can dive into the tape for an idea of what Diggs could bring once he gets back to or near full health. Diggs hasn't lost his football IQ or his 10-inch hands, which dropped just 2 passes last season, but he isn't the vertical or yak threat he was in his prime. The Texans compensated by keeping Diggs inside the numbers, which deterred press coverage and created two-way releases. Diggs went from being primarily an outside receiver with the Bills to spending nearly half of his snaps in the slot. Diggs did most of his short damage underneath, moving the chains on quick outs, option routes, and slants from different spots. Through the first 8 weeks, only Chris Godwin and Drake London had more first downs on such targets. On passes of at least 10 air yards or downfield targets, Diggs still excels at making defenders uncomfortable against off-man coverage and exploiting weak spots against zone coverage. Most of his success came on deep curls between the hashes and in-breakers behind the second level, which was on full display during his 6-catch, 82-yard road game up in New England. Here, Houston comes out in a 2-back pistol look with Diggs and Tank Dell in reduced splits to either side of the formation. Christian Gonzalez starts out in press, but bails before pointing his hips to the sidelines. Despite being at a leverage disadvantage for his in-breaking route, Diggs makes space by firing off the ball to create a sense of urgency, then faking outside once he's on the corner's toes. Then, when Gonzalez bites and tries grabbing to recover, Diggs swipes the arm away and breaks inside before catching a heater for 6 points. Diggs doesn't get the same consistent separation against press man, but his strong hands and concentration allow him to make difficult grabs despite being completely blanketed in coverage. That ability showed up during a clutch fourth quarter rep against his former team, the Buffalo Bills. Facing 3rd and 7 down 3 points, the Texans call a high-low concept with Diggs running a crosser from the slot. Corner Jamarcus Ingram lines up with inside leverage, so Diggs takes advantage of a free release by trying to beat Ingram to the spot. The corner stays glued to his hip when Stroud fires the pass, but despite near perfect coverage, Diggs adjusts to a low throw and scoops Stroud's throw off the turf, moving the chains and setting Houston up at midfield. Diggs didn't have the benefit of an experienced offensive coordinator in Houston, but that won't be the case in New England with 6-time Super Bowl winner Josh McDaniels running the show. Diggs' history with longtime Patriots assistant Brian Daboll, who served as Buffalo's coordinator from 2018 to 2021, should also make for a seamless transition to New England's offense. Here's an example of the Texans using Diggs in a similar fashion to Super Bowl MVP Julian Edelman. After initially lining up on top of the numbers, Diggs motions behind John Mechie to influence a free release. The Colts counter with a match coverage that pits Diggs against Kenny Moore in press man coverage. Moore tries jamming what he thinks is a crosser based on the inside stem, but Diggs jukes his defender to get wide open on a corner, although Stroud does end up missing towards the flat on the throw. Diggs' time with dual threat Josh Allen provided abundant opportunities to make plays off script. That skill set will be very valuable with Drake May, whose scrambling ability kept New England's offense competitive throughout his rookie season. While Stroud isn't as quick to break the pocket, there were times Diggs made himself available for the quarterback when things fell apart, like this 2-minute conversion in Week 4 against the Jaguars. Houston calls a stick concept with Diggs running a hitch outside, essentially eliminating him from the progression with Jacksonville and man coverage. Stroud doesn't like the initial look and is quickly faced with interior pressure, so Diggs works to uncover by running upfield to influence his defender before working back to his quarterback. Stroud finds his receiver after eluding a sack, and Diggs follows some questionable blocking past the sticks for what should be a conversion. It's impossible to predict how a 31-year-old is going to respond to an ACL tear, and one could nitpick the Patriots by criticizing their overpay, even by suctax standards, or by bringing up Diggs' diva reputation. To address the overpay, I simply do not care. This deal appears to have an easy out after the first season, so New England isn't on the hook financially for very long. It's also good for a team in a bad weather city with more money than they can actually spend to sweeten the pot for a high-profile veteran. Regarding Diggs' reputation, he's a 4-time team captain, including his first and only season with the Texans. Demanding targets did contribute to trades from the Vikings and Bills earlier in his career, but that wasn't an issue in Houston, and he's projected to be at the top of the pecking order for the Patriots. It's also unlikely that Diggs would make a fuss if a young up-and-coming receiver like a Jalen Poker or Javon Baker started to get hot and demanded more targets from their quarterback. To that point, Diggs' presence is going to be valuable for both Drake May and a young Patriots wide receiver room. Sophomores Javon Baker and Jalen Polk would benefit greatly from his professionalism and experience, and Diggs can provide the same for May in addition to being a reliable go-to in critical situations. If Diggs is relatively healthy and plays out his contract with the Patriots, it means New England got a relative steal for their young franchise quarterback and passing attack at a time when quality receiving options were pretty scarce. If Diggs is off the roster this time next year, odds are his off-field impact at least will have been worth a hefty chunk of change during a period of exorbitant wealth for the Patriots. Either way, this seems like a win-win for the Patriots and Stefon Diggs. In terms of role, I do think that we'll see Stefon Diggs used similarly to Julian Edelman, where he's primarily a Z lining up off the line of scrimmage, and where he can use free releases in motion to be used to his best capability. Although I do think he'll be used outside as an X receiver a little bit more than what we used to see from Julian Edelman. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to become members of Patriots Press Pass here on YouTube for more breakdowns just like this, as well as a ton of other great bonus content.